Hello everyone, once again, and welcome to our self-knowledge course. Today on lesson 19, we're going to talk about the transmutation of the energy. Let's get to it. So, when we talk about energy, we first need to define what energy is. So, physics tell us that the difference between energy and matter is its vibration. So, matter times the speed of light equals energy. So what this formula shows us is that the only difference between matter and energy is the vibration. Therefore, if we change something's vibration, theoretically, we could change its status, we could change its form. So, to change something's state, to change something's form, that would be the transmutation. So we would have a type of energy on a solid or dense state, and we would try to transform it into a more subtle or spiritual state. Think, for example, water. Water is liquid. However, if we lower the temperature, water becomes solid as steel. And if we increase the temperature, water becomes a gas, a vapor, something that we can't even see maybe. So we can see how transformation is something completely natural in the universe. It's a fundamental block of the creation, that things are transformed. So technically, nothing is destroyed, things are just transformed. So, how do we create energy? First of all, there's what we eat, solid food. When we eat something, let's say meat, when we eat vegetables, when we are eating a candy, sugar, all of those things that we eat, our body uses them to produce energy. But there's also what we breathe. And this is a type of energy that our body needs constantly. We would not be able to live for more than 3 minutes without breathing, correct? So our body also uses this other form of energy, which is oxygen, which is more gas-like, is not so dense or so material as food or liquids. The quality of our oxygen will determine the quality of life that our brain cells, our skin, all of our body has. And then we have the impressions that we receive. Now you will remember in lesson number 6 we talk a lot about this. When we watch a movie that's violent, there's a lot of aggression, there's killings, there's barbarism. The Dalai Lama says more than what you eat is what you think when you're eating. So the impressions are just as much important as the food we eat, as the food we ingest, as the air we breathe. Think about, for example, the type of impression that it is when you are on the countryside, contemplating nature, a waterfall, a sunset. Those are beautiful impressions, and that also feeds our body, feeds our life. It provides you with a different state of mind. But if you are in the city, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of people walking, smell, contamination, and then you go home. In what state are you going to be in? Well, you're going to be in a state that's not really pleasant because you've been eating all of those impressions, all of those advertisements, all of those noises. And so all of that influences your life just as much as the air you breathe and the food you ingest. Now, let us see the different type of energies that our bodies has. We know there's intellectual energy, there's emotional energy, motor energy that enables us to move around, but there's also the sexual energy. And we know that generally speaking, people use their sexual energy in order to obtain physical satisfaction. One thing would be to make love with our spouse, with our wife, which is something wonderful, something beautiful, that a man and a woman love each other, right? But something completely different would be masturbation, would be an addiction to pornography, would be adultery. So negative uses of the energy are not correct. This can only be done between husband and wife in houses, in homes, that are legitimate. That is, they need to be married and they need to love each other from their hearts. So, in those conditions is that we can talk about the transmutation, because we cannot expect to transmute the heat of love, the passion that we feel, the love of life. We cannot transmute it with someone that we don't love, someone that we don't care. What I'm trying to say with this is that this cannot be done with many partners. So polygamy, for example, it's not going to serve us for the purpose of the transmutation. So we need monogamy. We need to be faithful to one wife, and women need to be faithful to one husband only.
The perfect matrimony is the union of two beings, one who loves more and the other who loves better.
Now, why is it that we are saying that the need to transmute our sexual energies is fundamental in order to wake up? Well, it has always been like that. If we analyze every religion, every culture around the world, we will find that there are symbolisms that are hidden that can show us a hint of what the masters try to teach humanity centuries or even millennia ago. So we will be able to see that the masters of humanity always emphasized the need for sexual purity, the need to control our impulses, or very basic impulses. So we have religions or schools of regeneration where people become nuns or monks and try to control their sexuality in order to devote themselves to their particular belief, to their particular God. They will try to live a more spiritual life. Now, chastity is a fundamental part of any school of regeneration, of any school that tries to teach us how to wake up. Some schools do accept the concept of marriage, but they also propose the need to be faithful to one partner only. So what's clear is that lust and the abuse of fornication, of sexuality, adultery, all of those things are negative. Those things are considered sins or crimes, acts that go against the awakening of the consciousness. We are also aware that in the past, people would not accept, or it was forbidden to speak about sexuality in such an open way as we are doing it today in our cultures, right, in the world. Today, humanity has achieved a level of maturity, and we can openly speak about sexual health, about marriage, all of those things. But in past centuries, it was considered immoral to speak about sex. It was considered a taboo. It was something that no one would ever mention. No one. Yet everyone knew what was going on closed doors in a dormitory. However, it was considered incorrect to speak about it. So imagine if someone were to speak of the transmutation of these sexual energies 2,000 years ago, he or she would have been burned to the stake. So it wasn't possible. Today we can speak freely of this subject. Having said that, we are going to analyze some of the stories and traditions and different myths that will show us clearly that what the masters were trying to indicate to us was that the path to enlightenment, the path to the illumination, and the path also to hell or to the fall of man was in sexuality. So first, let's begin by taking a look at the mystery of Adam and Eve. So as the story goes, Adam and Eve, a man and a woman, are on the Garden of Eden, and they are alone, and they are naked. That in itself needs to make us think. We should think, like, why a man and a woman, and why are they naked, and why are they alone in that garden? You see, that's a reference to sexuality. When we are in love, we feel incredibly happy. So the Garden of Eden, in a way, represents the state, the euphoria that we feel when we are in love. We feel happy, we smile, our problems seem to sort of disappear, we get transformed. And in fact, if an old man falls in love with a woman, it's incredible to see how he rejuvenates himself. That's the power of love. So the Garden of Eden just represents that state of love, that state of passion. Now, in this Garden of Eden, there are two trees. There's the tree of life, and we can understand why that is. Because sexuality is what gives life, it's what creates all the human beings, is what makes someone come to life. As I said, an old man falls in love and he all of a sudden looks 10 years younger. So through sexuality, we access the tree of life. And that tree of life also represents the different bodies, the astral body, the mental body. It represents the whole internal constitution of a human being. And through sexuality, we can regenerate those internal bodies that we have. However, in this garden, there's also the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And this tree of knowledge of good and evil is very interesting to analyze, because it is said that it was the only tree from which Adam and Eve were forbidden from eating.
And the Lord Jehovah commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die.
So in this tree, there's a serpent, there's Lucifer, and they both eat of this tree, of the fruit of this tree, and as a result, they are cast out of the Garden of Eden. So the idea would be that this forbidden fruit is what we call fornication. So anytime we fornicate, it's like we are eating this fruit. So sexuality is not a sin, but fornication is. So one way in which a married couple can have sex, can love each other without falling into fornication would be by avoiding to lose their energy, essentially to avoid reaching the orgasm. So in that way, they will be able to love each other, but withdraw before the moment comes where the seed is lost. We could be talking about a form of sex that involves chastity. So that is why it is said that when Adam and Eve ate of the forbidden fruit, they were both cast out of the Garden of Eden, and they will no longer have access to the tree of life. Because anytime we fornicate, we are abusing the physical energy of our bodies instead of conserving it and saving it for a higher purpose. Let's take a look at another myth or story so we can further clarify this. In ancient Greece, there was a story of the mighty hero Achilles, and it is said that Achilles was a mighty warrior. And as the story goes, he had one weakness, which was Achilles' heel. So no one could kill him, no one could hurt him. But at one point in the story, Achilles takes a woman, and shortly thereafter, a poison arrow hits his heel and kills him. So Achilles would be just a representation of someone who has achieved enlightenment, of someone who is completely awakened. The minute he commits fornication, he loses everything and dies in a spiritual sense. So Achilles' heel is fornication. Now let's take a look at another story. For example, the story that took place when Jesus met a woman from Samaria at the well of water.
Jesus said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus saith unto her, Go, call the husband, and come hither.
That is a clear indication that we can access the waters of life in the perfect matrimony between husband and wife. In the story of Jesus, historians, the early fathers of the Bible, they decided to take out those fragments that showed proof of Jesus' marital status. Now, today, archaeologists, they were able to find the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Thomas, of Philip. All of those Gospels are just as important as the 4 Gospels that anyone can find on any Bible. And we need to ask ourselves, why were those Gospels not included in the modern versions of the Bible? So, our answer is that those Gospels contain information that it was not convenient for the leaders of that time, either for political reasons, economic reasons, hierarchy, ideology, whatever it might be. They decided to remove the role of women out of the Bible. When we take a look at the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it said that Mary Magdalene was actually a very intelligent woman whose status was way higher than that of the disciples.
And the companion of the Savior was Mary Magdalene. Christ loved her more than all the disciples, and used to kiss her often in her mouth.
Then we have a clear reference that Jesus actually was married to Mary Magdalene, that he loved her, and that they both practiced the perfect matrimony, that they lived as husband and wife. Now we reach a point where we might say, okay, and what about single people? Well, single people, they need to follow a path of chastity just as much as married people. However, it would be a form of celibacy. The idea would be that we try to control our sexuality, our impulses, our emotions, so that we will be ready for the day when we take a spouse, when we take a wife, when we marry, in order to live the perfect matrimony. The word chastity comes from Latin, castitas, and it means purity. So, as single men and women, we need to purify ourselves. We need to try to achieve purity. We need to try to look at the opposite sex with respect. We need to be a better version of ourselves so that we are ready to one day live the perfect matrimony. So, as single men and women, we need to do exercises. We need to try to direct the sexual energies that our bodies produce in order to regenerate our physical body. We must avoid the vices of pornography and masturbation. And on top of that, we can do an exercise which is called pranayama. So pranayama is a form of meditation that involves covering our noses and doing breathing combined with mental mantras, and imagining that our energy moves from the base of our spine into our head and eventually into our heart. And through concentration and meditation and our practice, as single people, we would be able to transmute those energies in order to achieve a form of chastity. So, I know that in this lesson we touched on a lot of points, and I'm sure you will have a lot of questions. Don't hesitate to reach out to your instructors so they can clarify more and more about it. And also, if you want to analyze and deepen your understanding on this concept, we invite you to read Master Samael Aun Weor's book called The Perfect Matrimony. So, that was all I have for you today on this lesson. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will see you next time. Take care.